Greetings and welcome to Covestone. This video will cover the Covestone ERP product catalog upload process. And we will start off by logging into our ERP system for this example. Yes, the usernames and passwords are case sensitive. All right, here we have our main according menu. And what we are going to be working on today can be found under the pricing menu, and it is marked Spreadsheet Price Load. And this will bring up the price load and catalog upload template program. They're both used for, well, the same thing. One aspect of it is used to maintain the product file information or the product database, and the other one is used to manage the catalog database. These are separate things, and they are kept separately on purpose so you can preload in the catalog a bunch of records that you may sell items out of at some point, but for whatever reason you don't want them added into your main product database immediately. As a general rule, you want to keep the product database relatively small and manageable so that you can maintain the quality of data better, and it's easier for your salesmen to do searches and find the relevant products in an easier manner. Now, before we get into the template, I want to cover something about the product file or the product database and some of the attributes in the individual records. This can be found under product maintenance, and we're going to just pick something out of the Delta product category, and probably something like this one is a good example. And here we are. So in this example spreadsheet that we were given, oops, wrong one. In this one, we have products with UPC codes. Now, the vendor could provide the UPC code in a variety of formats. They may separate the first 6 digits from the last 5 digits. They may decide to put a dash in between them. They might decide to give you the 11-digit UPC code, or they might decide to give you the 12-digit version or the 14-digit EAN code and call it a UPC. So before we get started on the template, I want to bring your attention to it. If you want things to come across cleanly and be able to match up, then you should pay very close attention to what format the UPC code is in your source spreadsheet compared to what the UPC code format is in your product database. In your current particular case, you are using 12-digit UPCs, and that's an 11-digit UPC with a checksum number at the far right end. And so that should match up with the spreadsheet from this example cleanly, so we don't have a problem there. Another thing to keep in mind is sometimes vendors will get fat-fingered or something will get lost in translation. And the Excel program has a habit of, if this particular column for the UPC code is formatted as general, it will truncate off the 0 from the very left end. And for a lot of vendors, that will completely skew the UPC code and you'll have match errors. So pay very close attention to the UPC code column and make sure it's formatted as text so that no zeros have been truncated. Now, it is fairly common that you will create a template for each different vendor that you deal with because each one will have a spreadsheet in a slightly different format, and that's perfectly okay. In my experience, I find it's usually a little better to have more generic format templates, so I have a smaller number and get into the habit of cleaning up all of the vendors' spreadsheets and changing them to a standard format that's just easier to work with. But this is entirely up to your particular taste as to which way you want to go with that. The system is completely flexible. You start off by creating a new template. In this case, we have already created the template, so we don't have to mess with the new part here. Okay, and we start off here by entering in the information into the identifier fields so that the spreadsheet data can match up. Now in this particular case, this is used to match up to existing records in the product database, and is not really particularly necessary for the catalog, but still this is the process that you go along with. Now going back to our original spreadsheet here, this demystifies what it is we're trying to do here. On the header entry, header lines, we're saying that we've got a one-line header. If you had multiple lines, if they added icons or whatever in there, and the first record starts at like 3 or 4 or 5 down, then you'd put 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down. Our UPC code that we're going to use to match on is, in this case, column A. Secondarily, the catalog number column, if it can't match by UPC, is here. So you see how this works out on this one. If you are matching by catalog numbers, if you're dealing with a vendor that does not have UPC codes that you've issued, or they have not issued, then you might want to add the additional byline filter, because different vendors could have duplicate catalog numbers, 512 for instance, something like that. So if you specify a specific byline, that helps the system search and match if there's duplicate catalog number entries, which particular vendor you meant. All right. At this point, you'll probably want to click Save once so that the basic parameters of this template have been saved out before you go anywhere else, or else you might lose your spot and forget what you were doing. Now, the rest of these parameters over here deal with pricing update in your product database, which will be covered in a different video. Since we're dealing with catalogs here, these don't particularly come into play at the moment. At this point, after you have created this template, put in these basic matching parameters, and click Save, then you would go ahead and choose the file to upload. And you'd select it from here, and then you do the upload process. The system is set in such a way that once a file is uploaded, it's in there forever. So since we've already uploaded this file once, and gone through this process once already, the last file uploaded will always show up in this field. You can overwrite this if you wish, but that's just a convenience if you need to run this process several times because you goofed on something and needed to match it back up. Once you have gone and selected the file, and you're going to upload for the first time, then you click Upload. This process is nearly instantaneous. If it takes more than 5 or 10 seconds, though, a progress window will pop up and show percentage complete. But typically, it takes no longer than about 60 seconds for several thousand records. After the upload process is complete, if you were doing a pricing update, then you would do an extract spreadsheet price data issue. And this will take a couple of minutes. I'm on a Mac here, so I get a beach ball. And spinny, 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 spinny. There. Then you'll get this merge complete note. And if we were doing a price update at this point, this shows all the different discount classes, price lines, etc., and all of the matches of the records in the product database, where we could then set a price effective date, and what pricing field in the system that we were making the change to, and we could go ahead and do a price update. Of course, we're not going to do that. Also in this process, usually you preview the changes, preview the unmatched, and do whatever little corrections need to be necessary to make sure that you've matched up everything that you need to match up. But once again, that is just the pricing update process, and we're not going to do that at this point. So what we're going to do is go to the catalog update tabs, because we're creating new records or updating existing records in the product catalog, which is an entirely different thing. All right, so this template here gives us a wide variety of controls over what data we're importing into the product catalog database. Taking a look at our original spreadsheet again that we imported, we can make sense out of what we're doing here. The system allows you some very, very creative things to do. You can merge and modify data as you're taking it from the spreadsheet and putting it into the database. In this case, in the description field that's going to end up in the database, we are merging the contents of column B with the contents of column D with a space in between. So you get a catalog number plus short description in the description field, which is fairly common, going back to the old trade service data days, and is fairly common for shims and Eclipse users. Over here, we can specify whether or not we're making a change to the product database or to the product catalog. Once again, the product database is your active file of stock and non-stock items. The catalog is a backup file of things that you may want to add and sell. So two separate things, two separate buckets of data. This left side represents all of the common attributes for the product catalog. And we can do creative things here. We're specifying the column that the catalog number is used in, where the UPC code is at. In this case, the price line and buy line was not in the spreadsheet, so we're putting a hard-coded text entry in there. We have list price, rep cost. If you had thumbnails to pictures, all those URLs and links can be put in there. You can specify in each of these attributes whether you want to replace existing information, leave the existing information alone, or just only update if it's blank. So you have a variety of issues here, and you can change how it behaves depending on if you're dealing with the product database or the catalog. Okay, on the right-hand side here, we have additional attributes, and these were columns of information in the originating spreadsheet that are not really used in the system and therefore not a defined attribute. But you can go ahead and store them in the database later if there's something that might be of use later or something you want to write reports on. So you can decide whether or not you're storing them in the product database or the catalog database, depending on what you're doing. Okay, it's also a good idea to specify the vendor that goes along with this, and this will check your vendor file and match to that particular vendor file in your vendor database. If you want to do this in the product catalog and for some strange reason you also wanted to add all of these new items to your product database, you can do both at the same time by selecting there. At this point, once you have all these parameters entered, you should go ahead and save these changes. And it might not be a bad idea to close this and reopen it to make sure that all the parameters that you expected stayed in place. Not necessary, but a good habit to make sure that it forces you to recheck everything to make sure that you've set what you intended to set. Once you've got all this in place, then you would go ahead and click Update. And within a very short span of time, seconds to a couple of minutes, and if it takes more than a couple of minutes, when the update is complete, it will pop up a window saying the update is done. But it's fairly short order. It's unusual for it to take more than a couple of minutes. You can run this process several times. So if you get something mapped wrong, don't panic. You can rerun this again. You don't even have to re-upload the file, because once the file has been put in there, it's there forever. And you can overwrite it if you choose, but you can keep working with that file and just tweak and keep running the update until you get everything in the format that you want. At that point, when you get the update done, then you have completed the process, and the next thing you'll want to do is verify the data to make sure that everything came out the way you wanted it to. And there are two ways of doing that. So the first way is to go ahead and do a sales order bid and select an example item to see if it comes through correctly. I've created a test customer on your system called ztestcod, so I don't get that confused with your other customer records that are in there. Once a customer is entered, any existing open orders or bids or directs will show up on this listing here. As we can see, there are none, so we're going to go ahead and create a new one. And here is our sales order entry screen, and it defaults to bid mode, so it's not committing any inventory. So at this point, I'd go to add an item to the bid. In this case, I'm going to put in birthday legs. And when I hit enter, it'll search the product file, and it finds one match for birthday bath legs. Okay. If this was not the product that I wanted, at this point I can go up and select catalog. And it will go and do a match on the catalog, and here it finds 4 more possibilities that could be the thing I'm wanting. At this point, I can go ahead and enter in a quantity. And as soon as this is submitted and added to the bid, this record will be copied over into your product database. Now, as is quite often the case, the record will pull over a lot of information, but it's not likely to have everything. It's entirely possible that the price is not up to date, or the product hasn't been classified in the right buy lines or price lines, or it hasn't been put in the right pricing matrix. If there's additional information that needs to be done, if you have the proper authorizations, you can drill down into the product and go into product maintenance and correct whatever costing or pricing or other attributes might be necessary in order to complete the order properly. Since we are doing just a basic bid though, that's not necessary at this point in the game. But anyway, that's a good way of checking a one at a time to make sure that things came out the way that you wanted. Another way of doing this process is you can generate a report. The Covestone system excels in a variety of reports, more than you could probably ever want. And this is just some of them. The system also has a very easy to use report generator, so you can create your own reports on just about anything that you could think of to your heart's content. In this case, I've created a very simple report just to take a look at the product catalog contents and what I think are the most important pieces of data. So I've given it a name, I've pointed at the product catalog database, and I have picked these attributes out of the list of attributes that are possible. After this, I can click Get Report. Within usually a minute or less, a tab-separated value format file will be generated and downloaded automatically. Be sure to check to make sure that your browser is not blocking the pop-up and blocking the download. You'll see a little folder usually with a red X on it over here. If that's the case, then you click on it and you have to tell your browser to allow that download to come down, and you'll have to rerun the report, of course. Here's an example of one of these reports once they've been cleaned up. The ID for items that have a UPC code, the ID will be the UPC code as well. They'll more or less match up. But if you had products that were not UPC'd, then it might be a concatenation of the catalog number and the buy line or price line, or possibly the manufacturer. As I may have mentioned, it is always good habit to not have any products in your product file that don't have a UPC code. If you do have vendors or items that don't have UPC codes, you can create internal UPC codes that you can track yourself. UPC codes are usually by standard 11 digits long, and if you make the first 6 digits 99999, and the remaining 5 or 6 digits, if you have a checksum 1 onwards, then those are that the 6 nines are not used by any other vendor out there, and so those are identified as internal numbers. Just a good habit, not necessary to do, but if you're trying to maintain hundreds of thousands of product records, it comes in handy. Anyway, so this quick and dirty spreadsheet gives us a quick rundown of the contents of the catalog file, uh, and I can apply filters in the report, which I didn't get into, to shorten this. Otherwise, if I had a million things in the catalog, then it would be a million record spreadsheets. So yeah, you might want to filter on Priceline or something like that. But this gives us good positive confirmation that what we uploaded into the system is what we expected. And that completes the product catalog upload and data verification process. I hope this is helpful. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for being a Covestone customer.